Welcome to this webinar focusing on an important and highly discussed topic within the instant payment ecosystem at the moment, and that is FedNow. The topic of today's discussion is navigating the future, a strategic roadmap for FedNow adoption. To do it justice, we have a fantastic panel representing the Federal Reserve, the payment and fintech industry, and global consulting companies specializing in financial institutions. Real-time payments have seen numerous success stories across the globe. And although not a new concept in the US, there is considerable excitement and hope surrounding FedNow. We will explore questions such as when it will be truly democratized, what the FedNow roadmap looks like in 2024, and what steps banks and credit unions need to take to accelerate its adoption. This session aims to provide perspectives and answers from experts. It is more than a one-sided question and answer format. It is a free-form fireside chat that promises to be interesting. Well, let's get started. To begin with, I will ask our guests to introduce themselves. Molly, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly Markham, and I am a program specialist with the industry relations team with the Federal Reserve Financial Services. So super excited to be here. I have been with the Fed for over 6 years, and a lot of my time has been working on the ideating and launching of the FedNow service. And our team specifically helps support the non-banks in the payment system, working to understand where there are opportunities or challenges in the payments industry that the Fed could and should support. And of course, one of those number one opportunities we're focused on right now is the FedNow service. So excited to be here and talk more about it.
Thank you. Daniel?
Yeah, thank you, Swaraj, for inviting me on this webinar. So my name is Daniel Chatlin. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been focused on payments and fintech for the last 20 years already. I'm running several organizations. One is the BayPay Forum, which is there to foster innovation in payments and fintech and bring people together between established companies and startups. I also run as CEO of Pay Academy, which is a platform to teach payments and fintech to retailers, bankers, and everybody in the ecosystem. And I'm also a mentor at 500 Startup, Plug and Play, Berkeley Venture Capital Group, and I'm doing strategy consulting on product and to help companies with their strategy there.
Great. Thanks, Daniel. And Nathan?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. So Nathan Hiltz, I am a managing director of Protivity, which is a management consulting firm. And I lead our payments practice, which basically works with clients, all things money movement. And so FedNow has been a topic that we've talked to clients and are starting to help them with, along with them understanding how this works with other real-time payment facilities, payment card, etc. And our clients, like I said, are the banks, the card networks, processors, both domestic, and then we have an international practice as well. So very happy to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
Great, fantastic. Well, welcome, Molly, Daniel, and Nathan. This is going to be an interesting discussion for sure. To begin with, let us set some context on this crucial topic. Let me ask the first question you, Molly. As FedNow gains traction with 500 plus banks, what is the 2024 outlook? Also, can you share common use cases that these financial institutions have implemented?
Of course, yeah, we are really excited by the progress of the FedNow service. So as you mentioned, we are over 500 participants live today, and that number just continues to grow every day, which is super, super exciting. And I think the product of a lot of hard work to really stack our adoption pipeline with financial institutions who are ready and able to go live. So 2024, I think it's no surprise to anyone here that continuing that adoption progress and getting as many participants up and running as we can will continue to be an extremely high priority for us and the FedNow service. And I think that will be true for a long time to come until we reach that goal of ubiquity. But the two ways that we're thinking about it include not just working with financial institutions directly, as we always have, and working with them to set their roadmap and to go live, but it also is critical to work with the core payment service providers that so many financial institutions lean on. Especially thinking of the small to medium-sized FIs who might not have either the resources or the technology to support 24/7 by 365 quite yet. We see core service providers as another great way to reach that long tail of adoption and to help us propel adoption even faster. So I think that's going to help us lead to a lot of success. But another key element of that is not just getting participants on the service, but how do we get them to really start using it, and where are we going to see the transaction volumes increase the most? What use cases are lighting up the industry, so to speak? So a few that we're seeing right now that I think may be of interest span across a lot of different segments, which is super exciting. So one area that we see for sure is account to account, A to A, which I don't think is any surprise to anyone here. And we've seen consideration in a few different ways. So you can think of it as, for example, brokerage accounts and the ability to more closely manage your investments, whether it's funding your brokerage or defunding it. That is really attractive to consumers who might want to make quick decisions and might not have the funds to do so. So being able to instantly and immediately move those around, give consumers that better control, and is a little bit more appealing than from a brokerage service standpoint. Similarly, a maybe more broad sense of digital wallets. So you think of many large merchants have their own wallet that you can use in store, QR code, what might be for point of sale. So if a customer is waiting in line and realizes, oh, I don't have the funds I need, but I want to use this to get my loyalty points, having that ability to instantly fund it or defund to give them that control is another thing that I know merchants are really excited about and exploring. And then if you think of the classic example of bill pay, consumer to business or C2B, that last minute or potential late bill pay is one that we see a lot of early on interest for, because for those who might be living paycheck to paycheck or don't have as much cash flow as they might want each month, the ability to actually pay your bill on the last day, the day it's due, and know it's going to settle in time and not take 2 to 3 days and potentially risk a late fee is really helpful for consumers and for billers who don't then have to waste the resources to go after or follow up or do manual processes to get that bill payment. We're also seeing, real estate transactions. If you think of title payments, mortgage, down payments, having bought a house recently myself, I wrote way too many checks to get it done. And so where is there opportunities to make that more efficient? And if you flip that, thinking of paying out a real estate broker immediately, these agents who might rely on commission as a main source of their payroll, that business to consumer side of it and that payroll element is a huge area that we're seeing blow up. And especially when you think of that earned wage access, again, coming back to living paycheck to paycheck, if you're able to access the money you have actually earned and not take out a loan, but access it early, it can give those employees a lot better flexibility and gives employers a leg up on competition when it comes to talent retention. So I expect to see payroll be a big spot. And then we've also heard from the business to consumer side, merchant refunds. This was a new one to me that I thought was interesting because obviously as a consumer, I want to get my refunds right away. And I have been that person who's wondering where it is. But thinking of the merchant cost for call centers and the amount of calls they are fielding, saying, where's my refund or I don't have my refund yet, making that instant automatically reduces that cost to the merchant, to the call center, and frees up some of their manual labor as well. So I think that's going to be an interesting space. And lastly, I would share government, I think, is ripe for instant payments as well. While you may not be thinking, oh, if only I could pay my tolls and parking tickets instantly, it is really critical because it's something that we tend to forget about. And there tends to be a lot of manual processes, whether it's having to go into a city hall or, go online, things like that. So making it just a little bit easier will not only help free up government resources, but hopefully makes the already painful customer experience slightly better. So just some of the use cases we're seeing and thinking about, but we are excited to hear more from the industry. So, as you're listening, or as we're out there in the industry, one of the number one questions we're asking is what use cases could support you the best, could bring you the best business opportunities, and how can we help make that happen?
Great. That is a great news. And I sincerely believe 2024 will be a significant growth year for FedNow
Yes.
and instant payments, not just for the parking tickets, but beyond parking tickets.
Beyond parking tickets. Yep.
Absolutely. So now let's hear from Daniel. Daniel, as a seasoned payment industry advisor, why does FedNow generate excitement among financial institutions? And do you perceive any skepticism?
Yeah, so that's a good question because if you look at the landscape of banking in the US, I would say that I would split it in two. On one side, you have the big banks. They already invested in real-time payments with the clearinghouse. It has been rolled out in 2017, if I remember well. And so today they kind of see FedNow as more competition, an annoyance compared to the other bank, the other side, which are a little bit more excited, but also, it's not all rosy. You have some challenges. And so that's why I split it in two for now. The smaller banks, the credit unions as well, they started looking at this. They're not completely on board. Today they can use the bigger banks. They pay much more money for each transaction, but at least they can provide these services if they really want. But on the benefits that they can get is today you have a kind of a monopoly from these bigger banks, and so you have to go through them to access the service. With FedNow, now it breaks the monopoly, I would say. So that's a really good opportunity for them to start onboarding on this initiative. You have also on the customer side, it's not everybody who will need real-time payments. You have another alternative, which is same-day ACH. And in this case, do you wait a few minutes or do you wait a day? I think it depends on the business of each company. But the real-time, as Molly mentioned, has some good applications. And even more than that, I work on innovation, so trying to help companies create new products. And that's really where I think the opportunity is for these smaller banks, because now they have access to tools that allow them to compete with the bigger banks. You have some challenges on the other side for this bank. First, you have the technology side. They have to understand and integrate all this. Everybody doesn't have huge staff of JP Morgan Chase, so we'll go back to that later. But you have also some operational changes. I remember talking to Mike Kennedy. He was at Wells Fargo at the time, and they were building a Clear Exchange that has been merged with Early Warning to become Zelle. And what we talked about is at some point when you reach the real-time level, you have an increase, a spike in fraud. And so that's why they merged with Early Warning, thinking that it's going to solve the problem. But that's really an issue for these banks, thinking, okay, now if I do this in real time, the money may be gone and I can't get it back. So I think there is some education and some good understanding of the new rules associated with real-time payments. You have, as Molly mentioned, the consumer adoption, the customer adoption. You have to train them, educate them to be able to understand the difference between the different ways to move money around. And also you have the competition. I think it gives you, if you are early, a competitive advantage, but I think later on it gives you a competitive disadvantage not having this. because the other bank will provide the service and you're left behind. So I think in terms of competition, you need to stay on top of that. Now, another question that I talked to many banks about, that's the pricing. How do you price this? Personally, I think the benefit is more on the receiving hand. So, but it's just me. So if you look at the high interest rates today, if you can gain a few days of treasury, then you pay less interest. So the fact that the sender is paying is, I think it's a little bit reverse. So there may be some banks that will, change that. We'll see. As a competitive advantage, the pricing, I think, is an important one. Another thing which is associated with pricing, today a bank has to pay a monthly fee of, I think it's $25 or so. So it's an additional cost if you don't have many transactions. So the first transactions are very expensive, but of course, if you have a lot of transactions, then it disappears in the mass. So that's for me a little bit the feedback on the optimism and the skepticism in the industry.
Yeah, agree. Great points. And you touched upon multiple points, Daniel, but one important point you talked about is there is opportunity for small as well as big banks equally, right? And FedNow truly brings the democratization of the instant payments in the industry, right? And obviously there would be some concerns around the fraud and security and so on and so forth, but I'm sure those will get addressed over the period of time. And that itself is a great segue for my next question, as they say that security is a journey and not a destination, right? And I would like to ask Molly about Fed's strategic plans and current status for anomaly detection, fraud prevention, policies ensuring confidence in both say and receive, as well as request for payment participation models. Molly, your views?
Of course. So we know fraud and risk mitigation in general is top of mind for everyone in the industry, consumers, businesses, financial institutions alike. And so we definitely have kept the goal of building a safe, secure, and resilient service from day one, and will continue that goal throughout the life cycle of the FedNow service. One thing that I think is important to mention is that, like I said, we have considered at the FedNow service and at the network level what type of protections are needed and what type of fraud mitigation and risk prevention tools and features can we offer to help at that network level. But we really also know this is a industry-wide effort, and financial institutions and their service providers really are that first line of defense when it comes to their customers. And so we've been working, not only to bolster our own service, but to help banks understand where they need to, really consider their own risk and fraud prevention tactics. And I think another great thing about this is there are so many industry participants and new fintechs and others coming out with a lot of service offerings to help financial institutions in this new instant world. So I think we're going to see a lot of exciting developments there, especially to keep up with different and emerging threats that appear. But, some of the things that are coming that we have at the network level that I think participants have been pleased with include digital signatures. So the FedNow service is designed to exchange digitally signed messages with participants. And this is really key, and it has a few benefits, including actually to help verify the integrity and authenticity of any messages sent, received, and RFP. So using that kind of as a protection is one layer that we have right now today. Another key piece, and we hear all the time about data, is data protection. And so making sure that all data exchanged with the FedNow service is encrypted in transit, but also all data within the FedNow service data environment, that is encrypted in transit and at rest. So having that encryption and added layer of protection is another benefit. but we are going to look at what other additional layered controls could further protect sensitive data and what kind of elements do we need to be considering, which I think will be really helpful to explore as we get some early on lessons learned in the next few months here. And then looking a little bit more broadly at fraud mitigation features, there's a few that we have today. So one is fraud reporting. Requiring our participants to report fraudulent activity will help us not only get that network purview of what type of activity is going on, but hopefully be able to do some lessons learned and machine learning from that as well. So having that overview might help us be in a better position than individual participants. But having that information sharing will really be key in order to let us do that. Another one is our transaction limits. So we do have a current transaction limit of $500,000. And not only is it helpful to have a limit, especially when a service is new and just has been launched, but it's also helpful because the financial institutions can actually set that transaction limit lower if they have maybe a smaller risk appetite, or if they want to roll it out slowly or have a little bit of greater control over what kind of transactions can move over the FedNow service when they first begin. So having that ability to change the limit and to meet the needs of each individual financial institution, I think is really helpful. And as an aside, we get a lot of questions about that transaction limit and if and when it would be raised, and what does that look like? And I think it's something we definitely hear the industry's feedback on, and we'll continue to monitor as the service continues to grow, where the needs are and when and how we should grow that limit as well to meet, a market demand and the industry demand as well. And then, as the adoption increases, like I said, we're going to keep an eye out for what other additional controls, things that we can add to. The last one that we do have today that participants can use, negative lists. So being able to supply negative lists at the RTN and account number level is another way to help supplement some of the financial institutions' existing fraud practices. But what else could we do? Things like velocity and cumulative value limits. Those are all being explored, as well as getting feedback from the early participants of what might be needed in the future.
Great.
I know Protiviti for many years, and a lot of good people there. Nathan is one of them. And so when you advise financial institutions, what are the different trends you see around the FedNow? And how do you collaborate with C-suite decision makers in this particular space? You're on mute, I think.
Sorry, we're going to get one of those. I will say that I'm a fan, so I just like listening to Molly because you learn a lot about what to talk to the banks about. And I will say it's an interesting thing. I completely agree with your viewpoint, Daniel, that this is meant to be for a much broader audience because the clearinghouse was perceived to be just that closed loop of participants. But I will say when you talk to those banks, it's a very measured pace is the way I would describe it. It's not that they're hesitating, but they're not in a hurry. And they really want to understand the use cases. So Molly, I'm really, really happy that as you see this, starting with the 500 participants, I think getting that message out there is really, really important. Because again, it's not that they don't want to do it. And I'm a fan of real-time payments. So there's like this kind of push-pull conversation with a lot of these banks to figure out what is their role in this. Are they only going to receive? Well, you know that a model in payments doesn't work if people are receiving. So you have to have both sides of the equation, and you have to have ubiquity and scale, and the costs need to make sense. So I think they really are trying to weigh that out and then understand the risk. So Molly, I'm super excited on all the things around fraud because it comes up really quickly. And I think, Daniel, your point around when you get to true real-time payments, there is a lot that you're going to miss. It's just not how fraud systems work today, especially in these small banks. So the good news is that there are models out there. So the consumers expect that, because I think that's the other thing that they're trying to weigh is like, what are my customers really wanting? Well, the fact that Venmo and Zelle and others have been out there and they provide some, fast payments, maybe not real time. The mentality is that that's what I want. and everybody wants to receive their money faster. So that's a guaranteed use case. No one wants to send it faster, but they definitely will want to receive it faster. And then I think the second thing that these banks are managing through, and Raj, we're going to talk about this, is that their environment is complex. Like they have a hodgepodge of players that they've used over time. They're trying to figure out how to move to cloud. What is a payments hub? Do I need that in order to get this? There's new vendors, there's fintechs I need to work with. So it's not like 20 years ago, I would go to one service provider and they provide all these things. It's Pinpoint that have come through over the years, and they're trying to figure out how that relates and where they fit in and how to prioritize. And I think the last piece is when you're weighing against those initiatives that are sort of in the queue, and I would say the smaller banks are probably behind because again they don't have the JPMC group of developers to do this. So with that, they really have to have the prioritization. It's use case to the customer, it's how do I manage that within my own system and prioritize, and then the risk and other things that are just going on in banking, they have to understand that to have a good value proposition.
Nathan had a lot of great points about what banks and credit unions and everyone's thinking about today and how they're preparing. So Daniel, I'm curious, as you think of maybe the broader FedNow impact on the US economy, and thinking about lessons learned or what we've seen from others across the globe, how do you think financial institutions should prepare, and what might that impact look like?
Yeah. So first, real-time payment is not new. It's maybe a little bit new in the US, but it has been, in the UK started the initiative a long time ago, 2008, I think. So unfortunately, because of this, they didn't use the standards that everybody is using today. So ISO 20022 is not their preferred protocol, but they can interface with the rest of Europe, which is using this standard. And today, FedNow is using this standard. You have other countries as well. And so I think there is an opportunity for this now system to be interconnected as well internationally with a little bit of a Forex flavor, but that's another discussion. I think for financial institutions and smaller banks in the US, they need to get help. You have around here, great people. Protiviti can provide some strategic and advice, but also provide a roadmap to help them, go from the strategic thinking and what they should do to the implementation. On the Nimbusnext also provide tools to do the implementation, like for example, FIS, Fiserv. So you have already people who went through the process of deploying this kind of technology and solution. You have also the Fed as resources, the Academy as resources to train the rest of the team. So I think it's important to not just have a few people understanding what it is, but have really the whole organization being able to talk about it and convince customer and educate and evangelize pretty much the benefits of this real-time solution. So I think, in a nutshell, it's really get help. People have done it before, and you have people who can definitely help you accelerate or understand the risk associated, the changes of rules that you have to have within the organization, the changes of policies that you need to have. And it's not something completely out of the box and completely new.
I completely agree what you said, Daniel, that asking for help is important, and there are all experts available to help each other. Though real-time payment is not new, there might be some skepticism, or I would say doubts in small banks and credit unions' minds, but there are players like Nathan coming from a big consulting company, or the niche product players like us, who are always ready to provide the necessary help and make the FedNow adoption process successful, right?
Mm-hmm. And there is also something I didn't mention, but which is important, is talk to your peers. You can exchange on this. You have forums where you can discuss, and I think that's very valuable to be able to share experiences within this industry.
I completely agree.
I completely agree with that. And I think some of the smaller banks, the credit unions, they have the ability to kind of get together in forums. But when you're sort of that mid-sized bank at 20 million, 25, like you're in a competitive environment, right? Because you're always chasing the big guys. You're looking at the local footprint that you have. So that idea of sharing, again, I'm a fan, and really promoting the use cases and seeing the value. Because the other thing that I think we'll talk about a little bit is that, the Gen Zs of the world, this is the world that they're expecting. I mean, that's just reality. They're not gonna, accept even, I said, I hope my kids never write a check. I don't think we'll get there. But I think they're more and more interfacing in a way that is real time. And so to that point of differentiation, or is this table stakes, I think you really have to focus on the customers, and that the way that generation is changing, and their expectation is that it is going to be real time.
While answering the previous question, Nathan, you did mention about how you typically collaborate with the C-suite and make them aware of what needs to be done and so on and so forth. I would extend that question and make it a little more interesting. What strategic roadmap would you recommend for a financial institution adopting FedNow? And if I may, I would add one more point. How do you collaborate with niche players for a mutually beneficial ecosystem so that it becomes a win-win-win situation for everyone?
Well, we definitely advise, which is a theme already here, of a front to back viewpoint, that you start with the use case, you start with the value proposition, you start with where you are today, how you want to differentiate. I was talking to a bank and they always use this term of they want to hit above their weight, right? They want to be able to provide the servicing for that. It's the medium and big size of SMB type of thing. They'd certainly like to service all of their clients in a certain way, but really getting that bigger client set and then understanding the uses that they want, and then that allows them to do it through this service. So what is a current pain point, right? Listening to your clients, they tell you the things that they want. So if you're starting with that, I think that makes all of the hesitation and uncertainty go away, because you have a clear vision of where you're going. And then the second would be, okay, once you have those use cases, value proposition, then you were able to work in the risk and the fraud and the changes, the policies, all the things that it takes in order to put this service together, who to talk to, etc. And then I think the last one is, all right, now you have to make some sort of programmatic and systematic changes. And Daniel, you've already said this, which is great, is ask for help. So I think this is why, we believe in Nimbusnext, because it's test, right? On use case, and then you get through the logistics, you need a system, a sandbox, an area to be able to test. And this stuff is complicated. It's not just complex in your own environment, but as Daniel said, you have the ISO 20022 standard that you have to think about. The use cases are a little bit different depending on the entities that you are going to interact with, so the data that they require. Like there's nuances to this, and it's a little bit different than what you're using today. So we have partnerships with some of the bigger players that have been mentioned, and certainly want to work with them. But the smaller players don't always want to use that. They want something that's sort of fit for purpose. And so that's why, we look at this as an ecosystem play, and being able to work with players like Nimbusnext is something that I think is really, really important, because it gives them flexibility.
Great. Fantastic.
So on that, I think I'll ask a question for you, Rod, since you've been asking a lot of the questions here. As you think about your company and what you put together and driving the FedNow adoption, what insights have you gathered as being a service provider to these prospects and clients, and how are you actively supporting them to accelerate all the things you've talked about with FedNow initiatives?
Oh, sure. Thanks for the question, Nathan. And just to give more context to the viewers, we are a Microsoft Azure-based technology startup. And we have taken ISO 20022 as a stand. That means like people take cloud first as a stand, or API first as a stand when they build and develop the technology and the companies. So we have taken ISO 20022 first as a stand. And we are building cloud-based industrial solutions for the payment industry on and around ISO 20022. And as you know, ISO 20022 is data rich, interoperable, and it is relatively popular standard across the globe, but it is complex. It is more complex when you test it thoroughly across the different business rules, for business scenarios, for happy as well as unhappy process paths around the FedNow, obviously. It becomes a very tedious and complex task. So in last 6 months or so, I interacted with our clients and many prospects, and the three prominent insights that I gathered are: one, they are looking for a comprehensive testing solution, right? They are emphasizing the importance of end-to-end testing solution. They are seeking tools that go beyond just the basic simulation, encompassing end-to-end testing, real-world scenarios, simulation for the chaos, simulation for the all unhappy paths, boundary conditions, and so on and so forth. They are also looking for flexibility and customization. As we all know, every financial institution is different in its own form, and they have their own set of rules beyond what FedNow and ISO level rules that we need to adhere to. But the clients are looking for flexibility and configurability of the solutions so that they can test their environments according to the business rules that they want. And then the third one is education, and they need clarity in the adoption roadmap. And this includes handholding across identifying the participation models, identifying the specific business cases and use cases, and not to forget about the technology and tools. So how we are helping the prospects and the clients is through our BlitzPay suite, which has multiple components, but the first one is BlitzPay Simulator, which is a testing sandbox, which takes care of configurable and customizable needs required by the clients, not just for testing the ISO 20022 FedNow payment message, but how do we test it in the real time across the multiple scenarios, across the chaos conditions, and so on and so forth. That is taken care by our BlitzPay FedNow simulator. We also go beyond the simulation, and we created the REST API solution along with the SDK to accelerate development of specific use cases to cater to the FedNow requirements on the ISO 20022. When it comes to the real-time analytics to extract the insights from the underlying ISO 20022 data-rich formats and present it to either the executives or to the operations or to the customer support or the fraud and anomaly detection agents, we do have an analytics solution that extracts the insight and present it within, I would say, less than a second. We also have the test data generator solutions that help financial institutions to have the synthetic data or the fabricated data to carry out lots of testing. Along with that, we also work with our partners like Protiviti, and we have been working on very specific use cases and business scenarios to help our clients adopt FedNow and be successful in their journey.
That's fantastic. And I really think it's important. You know, someone told me a long time ago, when you get to real time, and not just real time payments, just real time data exchange, that you have to have all the participants and the data exchange in real time. So the fact that you've built the Nimbusnext solution to be able to provide near real time in that simulation is very, very important, because you want to test against that model in real time. So that's great.
I agree. Yes, so now we are coming towards the end. Let me ask one important question to all of you, and I just wrote down here. What one advice would you give to financial institutions aiming for a seamless and successful FedNow integration? And we can start with Daniel, please.
So I will reiterate what I said earlier, which is get help. talk to your peers, talk to the people who did it before, who can help you on this journey, but also understand strategically if your customer base needs the solution or not. It's a basic, that's what I do with all the startups, what's do you have a product market fit? Yes, but you have to find your customers. Do they have to, do you have these customers today, or do you need to target a new set of customers in the future? So.
Great. Nathan?
I would say something that's from another big is just do it type of thing. I think that's my one piece when we talk, again, because there is this measured pace. There's a little bit of, I'm not in a hurry to do this. It's complicated, but as just a supporter of it, I mean, when this initiative came from the Fed a long time ago, there was a lot of excitement. And I think it's, again, this measured pace, but really just understanding the value proposition and beginning the journey. That would be my one message.
Great. And Molly?
I would +1 everything that Danielle, Nathan said, and I would, think of it, your journey as 3 key steps that I think we've all mentioned, but are worth reiterating. 1, educate yourself and your organization. And at the Fed, we have FedNowExplorer.org, which has a readiness roadmap, our operating procedures, a one-stop shop for everything you might need to know. So definitely check that out and talk to your partners. And then number 2, really discuss and explore opportunities across your organization. So we've talked about a lot of use cases and those, for consumers and businesses that might apply to your bank, your credit union. But if you also start talking to the other areas within your organization, maybe if you have a brokerage arm or even your human resources, you might identify use cases that could internally work for your financial institution as well. So not only does it help make sure across the board you have support and awareness, but it could also uncover efficiencies for your organization that you hadn't considered. And then 3 would be talk to your relationship manager at the Fed. So every financial institution is assigned a relationship manager who can help be your resource, answer your questions, talk about onboarding, all that good stuff. So hopefully you know who that is, but if you don't, you can go to frbservices.org, and there's a database to be able to look up who your relationship manager is and get that connection to the Fed as one of the other great resources like everything else mentioned today.
Fantastic. Great. So thank you, Molly, Nathan, and Danielle for valuable insights on FedNow's vision and mission, security, and adoption. We had a great discussion on the opportunity, customer expectations, practical roadmaps, along with the need for testing solutions. I appreciate the enriching discussion. Thank you all for your perspectives, and also thanks to our viewers. I look forward to have your feedback and comments. Thank you. Thank you all, and thank you once again. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Us.
Thank you.
See you.